Coming up, Zach LaVine takes over in Brooklyn and the Warriors lose on the road again. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA, local experts taking you from game to game throughout the National Basketball Association. I'm Kainani Stevens, your host. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. We have got all of your games for you, recapping from yesterday. We're going to start out with the Chicago Bulls, who went into the fourth quarter down by 3. Then Zach LaVine completely took over the game, scored more than the entire Brooklyn team in the fourth quarter. Locked On Bulls has the recap of the comeback.
The Chicago Bulls get the dub over the Brooklyn Nets tonight. What's going on, everybody? I'm Pat, the designer from Locked On Bulls, and the Bulls were in a battle with Kevin Durant tonight. Ayo Dosunmu did a great job making it just the Kevin Durant show between him and Alex Caruso, really shutting down Kyrie Irving tonight, who just was not able to get the offensive game going. And on the flip side of that, really keeping the game close all until Zach LaVine jumping out there and dropping 20 in the fourth to give him 20 of his 29 coming, and 15 of that in the first 6 minutes of the quarter. Bulls come away with the dub. Thought they did a lot of good things well in that third and fourth quarter defensively to really get their hands up, really close out on shots and make things tough. Kevin Durant's, of course, going to be a tough matchup no matter what you do, but when you make things tough for everybody else, that's where you see that pay dividends. Make sure to tune in to Locked On Bulls to hear more from me and Hayes as we break down tonight's win over the Brooklyn Nets. We'll see you over there.
The reigning champs still have not been able to win a game away from home this season. The Heat taking their turn at beating the Warriors in Miami last night. Both hosts from Locked On Warriors and Locked On Heat have what you need to know from that matchup between two of the last 4 teams standing from last season.
The Golden State Warriors have now dropped 3 straight games to go 0-3 on the team's road trip. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz with your Locked On Warriors Locked On Now recap of the defending world champions now going 0-4 on the road to start the season after falling to the Miami Heat 116-109. The Warriors didn't lose because of effort. Stephen Curry achieved his 10th career triple-double, scoring 23 points to go along with 13 rebounds and 13 assists. Steph leads the team in all 3 categories on the year. Andrew Wiggins broke out of his mini scoring slump, scoring 21 points, but the Warriors were outscored 54-37 in bench scoring and scored only 2 points in the final 5 minutes, 3 seconds to fall to 3-5 on the year. The Warriors next play the Magic in Orlando Thursday, and Kevin Dana joins me on the next episode of Locked On Warriors. Follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow.
The Miami Heat got a big win tonight over the defending champs, but more importantly, finally found their identity. I'm Wes Goldberg with Locked On Heat, coming to you from FTX Arena, where the Miami Heat just beat the Golden State Warriors, the defending champs, 116-109. So a big win for a team that was 2-5 and struggling and facing doubts about whether or not they were still a playoff team, whether or not their window was closed. Now, one night is not enough to make any conclusions about whether or not that is true, but tonight they did figure out how it is that they want to win games. 42 three-point attempts tonight for the Heat after averaging about 10 fewer than that per game. They want to get up more threes. They want to defend in transition. Just 5 fast break points for the Warriors tonight, which is a big change from their first 7 games of the season. The Heat just finally figuring it out. Finally just sort of putting together the identity and finally looking like the team that we were accustomed to seeing last season, a team that defends well in transition and in the half court, gets up a bunch of shots and creates space for their main guys, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo in the paint. Bam had 19 points on 8 of 15 shooting. Jimmy Butler had 23 points on 6 of 17 shooting, including the dagger mid-range jumper over Klay Thompson in the final 10 seconds of the game. It was a thrilling one here at FTX Arena, but more importantly, a one for Miami that could potentially set up a nice little run here. For more on the game, go to Locked On Heat, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube.
The Thunder move above 500 with a win against the Magic, and Locked On Thunder likes what he's seeing to start the year, while Locked On Magic said it was more of the same in another loss for Orlando.
The Oklahoma City Thunder are above 500 after this win against the Orlando Magic. SGA drops over 30 points again, but his free throw streak comes to an end. But the most impressive part about SGA's game is his improved playmaking and efficient defense, where he locks down Franz Wagner in this one in the fourth quarter to propel the Thunder in this comeback win. SGA is an all-NBA player, folks. Maybe not this year, but for sure throughout the rest of his NBA career. He also gave glowing praise to Chet Holmgren in the post-game press conference. We'll talk about it all on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.
This is Philip Rosswright, the host of Locked On Magic. The Orlando Magic fall to the Oklahoma City Thunder 116-108. And the one takeaway from this game is the same takeaway that it's been from every game this season, because every game for the Orlando Magic through 8 games, through a 1-7 start, has virtually been the same. So guess what? It's time to make some edicts. It's time to tell this team to do what it said it was going to do all offseason long. It's time to level up. It's time to cut out the turnovers. It's time to cut out the silly fouls, the silly mistakes, the little plays that add up over the course of a game that ultimately lead to defeats. It's time to protect double-digit leads, as Orlando's blown 3 so far this year. It's time to level up. It's time to take all these lessons from all these losses, all these hard, frustrating losses, and turn them into wins. This season is about learning how to win. It's about learning how to be in these close games. The Magic have successfully been in close games. Now they have to get over the hump, and they have to win.
The Minnesota Timberwolves lost to the Suns in Phoenix on Tuesday night for their second loss in a row. Our host at Locked On Wolves tells you what went wrong for Minnesota.
The Minnesota Timberwolves played one of their best, most complete, all-around competitive games in the young season so far, but still lost to the Suns on the road Tuesday night. I'm Ben Beacon with Locked On Wolves, and the Timberwolves' offensive issues early in the game, inefficiencies, lack of attention to detail, put them behind the 8 ball from the start. And then, despite playing pretty good defense for the majority of the game, the third quarter was miserable for the Wolves defensively. They let Phoenix build a lead of up to 18 points. And while the Wolves got to within 4 points, and actually at one point to within 2 points several times in the fourth quarter, a late surge from Anthony Edwards just wasn't enough to get it done. Chris Paul began to slice and dice the Timberwolves defense in the fourth quarter. And what went from a good defense, bad offense early in the game flipped late in the game, and the Wolves struggled defensively down the stretch while the offense did their part to keep the Wolves in the game. This was a bad game for D'Angelo Russell, a solid game for Karl-Anthony Towns, and an up-and-down game for Anthony Edwards. We'll break it all down on the post-game podcast. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
That's all for Locked On Game to Game NBA. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On NBA and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.